Oh, hello! It is I, Ultimate Gomi, and this is going to be my first installment of my review series, Is It Trash? And we'll be kicking things off with the Cyberpunk Edgerunners anime. So, going a little bit into the premise of the anime, Cyberpunk Edgerunners is an anime based off the popular, in quotation marks, Cyberpunk 2077 by CG Projekt Red. The story is a prequel to the anime and takes place in the same universe, and it's a hard R-rated show animated by the legendary Trigger, directed by Hiroyuki Imaishi. Now, this anime is famous for single-handedly reviving the Cyberpunk anime. I said popular in quotation marks, mainly because the Cyberpunk anime, they had problems at the start. I had a lot of friends who were very hyped for it, as was I. They got the game and told me stay away from it. So I'm going in this game. I will be honest with you in that regard. So the story of Cyberpunk Edgerunners stars a young but brilliant, yet also dirt poor David Martinez. I resonate with that. Minus the brilliant and young part. After a major tragedy, he's forced onto the streets and into a life of crime, in which he meets a edgerunner named Lucy, who introduces him to the world of being a cyberpunk, as he joins up with a crew of cyberpunks led by Maine. To be fair, the story is very cookie cutter, is not super outlandish, super, what's the word, unique, but it's simple and effective. It really does a good job of getting you to care for the characters, and that's the main thing that really carries it, because they don't have some super overarching goal other than just Lucy's simple dream of wanting to go to the moon and David trying to find a place for himself. But it just works being a character-focused series. Now, to focus on the characters of the show, as that's the main thing that the show really focuses on. The show is a very small, yet extremely colorful cast of characters. One of the unique things about it is the characters that are very small and don't have a lot of screen time still manage to leave an immensely lasting impression, and the main cast leaves even more of an impression. Some of the smaller role characters like Rebecca or Adam Smasher burn a hole in our minds, while mainstay characters like Lucy, David, and Maine burn a hole in our hearts. Despite having a cast of characters who are so morally gray or even morally black, we really end up feeling for them and their struggles, and we just want them to succeed. Despite the amount of corpses that they leave in their wake, we still hold on to that hope that every character will get a happy ending. But how these shows mainly go and living a life of crime, brutality, and violence, sometimes I might be asking for quite so much. Some standout characters would be the main character, David Martinez, has a very stereotypical journey of a protagonist, but he's just so endearing. Maine being a really especially lovable character, acting as a father figure and leader for the gang. You really like Maine, especially for his episode. And a big standout character is actually going to be Rebecca. She really ended up being the character that a lot of people gravitated to and a lot of people hailing as best girl. She's just a Trigger character placed in the show where a lot of the characters don't feel necessarily like Trigger characters, and she's just such a fun character. Now to the fun part. The animation and the artwork. As you can see by the beautiful slides I have playing, the show is pretty. The show, it has one hell of a budget and it makes good use of this. You can tell right from the first episode. And they were smart with that budget, like I mentioned, because it doesn't dip in quality at any point. The characters were on model where they needed to be, but in usual Trigger fashion, they had no qualms of going off model. The action was great on all fronts, everything. Something else amazing was the sheer amount of gore and violence, which is extremely unusual for Trigger. This is something that they really don't get to showcase a lot because they'll usually shoot for more PG-13 works. The entrails, the brain matter, the body parts, the gore was off the charts. But it's not something for the faint of heart. I will be honest with you, a lot of people don't like ultra violence. It's not for everyone. It's something to really kind of hesitate when recommending shows like this. One episode that I want to give special props to, episode 6. We will talk about it in a little bit more detail, but episode 6 just had some of the most beautiful animation and directorial style I've ever seen in my entire life. Oh man. But overall, gotta say, great work from Trigger. No complaints here. And next is going to be the sound. Sound was amazing. It borrows a lot of sounds for the game, which is really nice. It works very well how they implemented it. The gunshots are punchy. The gore and bodies exploding are guttural and visceral. In terms of voice acting, I watched in dub, and I thought the dub was absolutely amazing. Some special shout outs to David, Maine, Lucy, and also Faraday as well too. I personally love the dub, and I've heard the sub was very good. One of my friends watched it in sub. I don't know, I felt like it felt more like it was leaning towards the dub being based off an English video game, but still, I feel like you could watch it either way. Then for the soundtrack, as I mentioned earlier, they had an insert song in pretty much every episode, giving it such a cinematic feel, and some of those songs mesh so well. I saved so many of the songs from this show onto my Spotify playlist. Some standouts would be Major Crimes by Health. Also, I Really Want to Stay at Your House, which was the main song connecting David and Lucy in their relationship. And then, forgive my pronunciation, but Urgori Zuwawi, which is going to be the Urgori by Zuwawi, which is going to be the song in the pivotal moment of episode 6. Oh, beautiful soundtrack overall. Now for some highlights. Be wary, this next section is going to contain spoilers, so I would recommend skipping ahead if you do not want to be spoiled. I'm going to be talking about the episode 6, which is what this screenshot is from. Episode 6 is the pivotal status quo change of the show, in which Maine goes full cyber psycho. His cyber psychosis is something we saw coming from a mile away, but despite being super predictable, it ended up being so well directed in all aspects. It had a complete and total artwork change, it had beautiful sound design, and it had an amazing soundtrack to boot, and it just felt like out of place from the rest of the show, yet pivotal to the show. And that's why I feel it's one of the greatest episodes in anime of all time, or at least recent memory. Maine was a really good fan favorite character, and seeing him slip into psychosis, just, you didn't want it to happen, but you knew it was going to, and it had to happen. The song that played, Urogoi by Zuwawi, is a slow funeral dirge played over a soft, mournful guitar. A funeral not for Maine, but for his lost dreams. An ode to the pain and suffering he's felt over the years. But one thing I really loved about this episode is despite his lapse of sanity, he still held a special place in his mind for David. And he even allowed David to go into his nightmare world where he was stuck on that field, the burning pyre for Dore, and then the black dot, which was the Max Tack coming to execute him, the Reaper. Just everything was on point. In the scene where he tells David to run, you could see in his eyes that he is gone. He is far gone, yet, he's still able to use the last little shred of sanity that he had left to tell his friend and his protege to run. And in conclusion, overall, Cyberpunk Edgerunners is a masterful series. One of the best in all times. A series that from Trigger that single-handedly managed to resurrect the game. It's insane, but it's so well deserved the amount of praise that this show has been receiving. If you thought this was just another silly series from Trigger, you were oh so wrong. It was an ode to dying for your dreams, but also being able to fulfill them. The whole series was a bunch of dreamers who some attained those dreams, some held on to those dreams as a comfort in the afterlife. The series quickly became one of my favorite series of all time, one that I will rewatch very soon. Overall, I will say Cyberpunk Edgerunners is not trash, with a final score of 9 out of 10. I highly recommend you watch this series if you could stomach copious amounts of gore and nudity. This has been Ultimate Gomi. Bye-bye.